Order the Village of Vernon Hills Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, November 30th. Could I have a motion to appoint a chair pro tem for this meeting, please?
I move to appoint Jim Heidner as chairperson for this evening.
And is there a second?
Second.
All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Heidner,
Yes.
and Chairman Morris gave prior notice that he would not be in attendance.
Thank you.
Okay, and we also need to call the roll.
The roll call, please.
Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Here.
Mulcrone,
Present.
Heidner.
Here. Okay, the first item on the agenda today is a case number 2022-13. And before we get into the depths of that, we also have some rules and procedures that we're to follow for land use public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission that we have been provided with, and we have, I will make a motion to approve those as part of our normal procedures.
I make a motion to adopt the rules and procedures for land use public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission, the document that we have received and studied for this evening. And I would like a second for that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Heidner.
Yeah. The motion is adopted. Okay, case number 2022-13, as I mentioned, is a petition by Neil Hoffer, doing business as Winhoff Air, Inc., for a special use permit to allow a children's recreation facility and amusement recreation or training facility for adults known as Urban Air Adventure Park. And that's going to be located at 413 North Milwaukee Avenue, Unit 200. Is there a representative from the petitioner that's going to speak?
I'm Neil Hoffner. Just swear everybody knows the group.
And if you would come up and identify yourself and anyone else you're going to have speak for you tonight.
Okay, I'm Neil Hoffner. I'm representing Winhoff Air, doing business as Urban Air. And I also brought Adam. He's the architect who's very familiar with the building and the plans that went into it.
Okay, if he's going to speak, he has to come forward also. And I'll swear you both in. The other gentleman is not going to speak for you tonight?
The other he's welcome to. He's representing the landlord. That's Dean.
Well, if he's going to speak, I'll ask him to come forward as well.
Anybody else?
Sure. I'm Adam Stein. I own Logic Design and Architecture. I'm also the corporate architect for Urban Air.
Do you have the business card?
We have that signed in.
Okay. All right, if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you present tonight will be the whole truth and free from significant omission?
I do.
I do.
Okay.
Can one of you pass up that sign-up sheet to the chair, please?
We can get him when he comes to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
Just,
I
if I could just interject real quick, just as a procedural note for the record for us. This public hearing was published in the Daily Herald on November 14th. The public hearing sign was posted at the property on that same day, and the letters to property owners and tenants within the required notice area were sent out that same day. Sorry to
And
interrupt.
nothing was received. correct?
And we received no written objection.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you make sure you speak in the microphone?
Okay. So I emailed slides out. I don't know if they're available, or I could just discuss them. So whatever your preference is.
You can drive if you want to hit down on that keyboard, or I can advance them for you.
Okay. So Urban Air Adventure Parks, just for a quick brand introduction, Michael Brown started the first Urban Air as a single trampoline park in 2011, And since then, it has grown into a multi-attraction park, supporting go-karts and even wind tunnels. Currently, there are 230 adventure parks. Of those, there's 153 that are currently in operation and 80 plus in development. And we offer membership programs, casual cafe, walk-in guests, birthday parties, corporate and field trip events. What makes Urban Air unique, it distinguishes us from our competition, is we're always innovating. What originally started with trampoline parks has evolved to a full range of attractions, rock walls, go-karts, rope courses, and even indoor skydiving. Home office, that's the corporate franchise. They're willing to try out new technologies on themselves before franchisees spend their own capital. So that's one thing that makes them unique. We offer multiple guest experience options, day passes, memberships, tiered rates, birthday outings, and special events. So these can be tailored to your budget or what kind of experience you want. We have robust brand support with the home office, network of franchisees, and also Unleashed Brands is becoming a brand of many brands that help complement what Urban Air offers, such as Snapology, things that you could adapt into your birthday party rooms to add STEM activities. They're very data-driven. Urban Air believes in real-time metrics to analyze revenue streams of birthday parties, memberships, even food order, NPS scores that involve customer satisfaction. So they're always analyzing the data and seeing how we could get better or identifying rooms to improve. And we all have a shared commitment to kids. Many owners have backgrounds with child-focused businesses, and Urban Air provides an opportunity to diversify into the child entertainment and translate those existing skills that we've developed onto an Urban Air brand. There's been a question about what nearby Urban Air franchise locations we have. While there are none in Vernon Hills, besides the one that we're presenting, these are the map that shows kind of some of the local ones that are more around the Chicago area. So each franchisee has a separate territory, and we're kind of spaced apart to make sure we can sustain and not compete with each other.
What does the parentheses, like 2.0 and 2.5 mean?
So a 2.0 is what you call your basic park attraction. And if it's a 2.5, you either offer a premium attraction like go-karts or the wind tunnel where you could do skydiving. So that's, usually those will require a bigger square footage.
Thank you.
And the proposed location is 413 North Milwaukee Avenue, Suite 200 in Vernon Hills. This used to be an Ashley Furniture. The building's been empty for, I think, about 5 years now. And it's a great location. It has a big square footage that's very desirable for Urban Air, and it can sustain a 2.5 park with the go-karts. So it's very difficult to find demographics that support an Urban Air, along with the building that's existing that can house one as well. This is an example of the food menu. What distinguishes it a little bit from the competition, like a Dave & Buster's or even a Main Event, is we know that kids are on the run. They usually want food that's familiar, and they may be at the park for about 3 hours. So this is something that's designed for grab and go with familiar items and just entice kids with impulse buying and also just get them back into playing after they had a quick bite. There's also, we offer a small selection of bottled beer and wine. This is something, some locations may want draft beer or have a bigger selection, but to kind of reduce the alcohol consumption, we've elected to just narrow it down to the choices to bottled beer and bottled wine. And this is just a snapshot of some of the attractions that we're offering. That's very unique to Urban Air. While some competition will offer some elements that will overlap with, especially with the trampolines, but it'd be difficult to find one that houses all these in one facility, particularly with the go-karts, climbing walls, Skyrider, and the ropes course and adventure hubs. And I think that's what really sets us apart and offers more to the community, as well as laser tag too. And this is part of the ticket pricing to have a tiered approach. Some children might be a little too young, so they don't want the full package. So then you could offer something like a basic package for those kids to enjoy. Or if the ones want fuller experience, then you could offer platinum attractions like go-karts and some of the more premium rides that we have.
And those packages that you're referring to are what you refer to as your day passes?
Yeah, these will be day passes, and then you can also do memberships. So the memberships would be more of a value option if you're going to have more frequent visits. And hours of operation, per the agreement that we have with our landlord, minimum hours would be Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. to 8. And Friday, it kind of opens up, Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. And Sunday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So these hours that we'll see with the minimum operation will happen mainly while school's in session. So it kind of complements while the kids are at school, or even the students are employees, then we'll open kind of more in the evening. Where we would open up our hours would be during summertime or special events. And then we'll run some special events and promotions. Typically, home office or the franchise will offer it once a month. Each owner can provide their own. Say if you want a local charity or fundraising event, you can do that, but you need permission from the franchise to basically use their name to make sure the font and the logo and colors meet their advertising requirements and standardization. So we can do that, and once we get approval. And we've done things like, with my current business, we've done things like sponsor local soccer teams, canned food drives. So we have these little in-house promotions too that we can do that kind of deals with what the local community is doing at the same time. And employment, a 2.5 park is one of the bigger parks that Urban Air offers. We're estimating to have about 130 to 150 employees, which consist of both full-time and part-time. Full-time would be your management, your general manager. You'll have assistant general managers and leads. Particularly with the more complicated attractions, you'll have someone who's full-time and have a little more expertise with the staffing, and we'll have a full-time maintenance person as well to keep up with the upkeep on go-karts and bumper cars. The rest of the employees will be part-time, and a lot of them will draw from schools or colleges, and the schedule will kind of work on their work-life balance. During operation, we're expecting to have 30 to 50 employees scheduled. Staff levels will fluctuate between peak and non-peak hours, seasonality, and low, high traffic days of the week. And per the code, we're set at 779 people. There's things that we can do that I've learned from other franchisees to reduce the crowds. Sometimes the atmosphere may feel a little bit crowded, so we could limit ticket sales, and these are for the walk-ins. And you'll have assigned wristbands too once you're in the park that give you a certain time slot. So you can call those when time is due. Sometimes, if it's not too bad, you give people like an extra hour or something to play. But if it does feel crowded, then you go ahead and call those bands. And that's all I have.
Now you have trampolines. Recently, there's been a lot of news stories where trampolines weren't maintained properly and people were getting injured. What do you do to control that in your facility?
Right, so there's a lot of things, and it's multiple layers of failure where that happens. So during Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there's inspections that you do in the beginning, sometimes midday and at the end. So that's your general manager will come by, do visual inspections. You'll have spares on order. And they also, that you'll be able to pull from the spares if there is something broken, like springs or something, or it needs a new mat. The other thing too is if there's an issue, you write up something that was called like a Zen ticket. So this is part of where the franchise likes to be in this digital world where they have transparency. So they want to know when the issue was written, and they timestamp it, and they want to know the response time as well. So these are all tracked both internally and with the franchise. And then in terms of other inspections that, there's third-party inspections too that are required, where you hire another company to come and basically audit and inspect your facility.
And you offer go-karting. How is that an electric go-kart?
It's an electric go-kart, and it's very unique because they have, while they're resting, you have 3 lanes. One will be a dual seater, so you have 2, and this is for kids who are too small that want to ride with a parent, and then you have 2 rows of single seaters. So they'll basically one lane will go at a time, and the other 2 are charging. So while they're kind of waiting there, they're actually charging while the other, when that single lane is still going around and doing it. And that's one of more complicated attractions. So you'll have someone at the bottom who's there for safety and another person who's near the top controlling it too. So if there is a collision, then they could stop it and basically freeze all the carts in their spots while they kind of deal with traffic jams or.
When you said, maybe I don't understand your track layout.
Yeah.
You're saying something's high and something's low.
Right.
Usually I think of a track
It's
as flat.
multi-leveled for the experience, so it'll go up and there's a couple loops. You could see it in the drawings, and then it goes down, and there's, so it's not a straightaway, it's not quite a donut, but it has a couple features to it. And then there's also settings on it for speed, and usually we just keep it at the lowest setting for safety.
And what is the recommended age for that attraction?
That one's kind of more of a height requirement. So I think it was 42 inches or something like that.
Do you require helmets?
They don't require helmets, but they have seatbelt harnesses.
Okay.
So if this attraction had such an event where you had to turn off the power, what happens then?
So then once everything's shut down and all the cars are frozen, then the operator who's upstairs or at the second level of the ramp, they would go physically walk over. There's a joystick on the back of them where they could kind of get them, if they're kind of wedged into each other like T-boned, or if they're stuck against a wall, they can maneuver them. It's not so manual because you got the joystick, so they don't have to physically push them. They could just drive them out of wherever they got stuck, and then they could hit resume.
And if somebody's not involved in that particular incident, but they're somewhere else?
Oh, it shuts down everything. So
Who's paying attention to those people? I mean, what's the likelihood that they might get out of their vehicle or their go-kart and?
right, so with this attraction, the recommendation by the vendor was to have 5 people, and they're kind of stationed like, almost like security cameras where they're constantly monitoring and engaging with each other.
Okay.
But for safety, they would all shut down, so you don't have one rogue cart still driving,
And is the raised elevated portion fenced?
It has barriers. So it has impact barriers and a rail as well.
So how many different attractions are going to be in this particular store?
I don't know if I have the exact count. I'm more familiar with the premium attractions. So laser tag, virtual reality, go-karts, climbing walls, Apex, various trampolines, and there's I forgot the name of, there's kind of like a tunnel for the younger kids, kind of like what you would see at McDonald's where you have the slides and a bunch of hamster tunnels crawl through, but about 10 times bigger than that.
And all those things you just said are going to fit in this facility here?
Yes, it's over 60,000 square feet, so it's the
It
architect.
looks like the go-kart track takes up almost half of it.
It takes up a lot, and some of it, like the ropes course, along with the virtual reality, you'll have, this is a newer concept where you have an open arena, and then for the laser tag, and then you have the ropes course on top where they're kind of walking the tight ropes when they're strapped into the harness. So you can basically integrate a couple together and save square footage.
Yeah, two different layers?
Yeah, 2 different layers, exactly.
So this facility seems to have a lot of staffing needs. And you've indicated between 130 and 150 overall for this facility.
You're right.
So on a typical Tuesday, when you have a light group of people visiting, likely during the hours that you've listed, how many staff, what is the bare minimum of staff that can work this facility?
So from initial talks that I have, it was close to 30. It would be your skeleton crew, where you would beef up. We have about 10 birthday rooms. So if they're not being utilized, then you have your opportunity to reduce there. And depending on how complex the attraction is, like maybe on the weekdays you'll have 5 for the go-karts, but if it's not being used that much, then you can narrow it down to 3. So just a couple savings of some crew, that's where you get your reduction of 20.
I was just interested in, at your least, busy time.
Yeah.
What that skeleton crew would be. I also noticed that the party rooms were quite small. Are those, do they have like movable walls so that you can enlarge them or things of that nature?
Yeah, so we use coiling overhead doors between multiple rooms. So the occupancy of each room is set at 24, so that when combining rooms are less than 50,
Yeah.
Which has some additional kind of code impacts on them. But that supports the typical 20-person party that Urban Air kind of advertises for and allows extra occupant space for parents to be standing.
Is there, I didn't see any signage in this petition, at least in the materials that we have. So is that something that you're going to be coming back for, or is
Right, for the
how you're-
signage?
Yeah, signage on the
Yes,
exterior of the
I'm
building.
trying to get some more dimensions, and I might have to do a field measurement. So that's something that I'm still working on.
Yeah, okay.
Typically, we would see the sign vendor themselves, who's an Urban Air, like approved vendor, would produce a sign package based on site specific that would submit that under separate cover for approval.
Okay.
Right, and it'd be for both locations of, I guess, the store frontage as well as the plaza signs.
How many parking spaces are directly in front of this location?
It's in one here.
I'm assuming this is shared parking with Joanne, DSW, Bed Bath & Beyond. Or is that separate? Is there a cross-access agreement for parking? Because this is going to generate a lot of cars. We're saying there's 285 stalls just for employees, so that's more than what's in front of the store.
Yeah, the biggest difference that is seen, if you're in the TV equipment, the biggest difference that's seen in the Urban Air end is that, is what, when Neil had the prices up, Urban Air strongly encourages like families to attend together to the point where there's ticket prices and then parents are allowed to play at 50% or even less than that to encourage play with their children. The average, it's like 3.8 or something like that is the average number of people that come in one car. So when we look at a max capacity and break it all down, so like I work with the brokers and the developers on a lot of these deals in the front end, we're usually looking for between 3 and 4 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet. That's sufficient to be able to support all the urban areas. And there's parking tests and stuff that were done, parking studies that were done on that as well.
Right, so with the urban air, they required 4 spaces for every 1,000 square feet.
So 240 cars.
Yeah, I think that's a rough estimate. And then when they approved it, it was shown that we sufficiently met that requirement.
If you guys could try to speak into the mics, I'm not sure if we're picking up everything that you're saying. Thanks.
Okay, with Urban Air's requirement for the franchisees and the site, they required 4 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet of the building.
Okay. I guess my question was how many of those, so if there's 240 spaces you need, how many of those are directly in front of that building versus borrowing from Bed Bath & Beyond and DSW?
I don't recall.
I'm just assuming that you're going to have, hours are going to be the same sometimes for those stores, and people tend to want to park as close as possible, and if you have this huge influx of
Right.
cars, will you be taking spaces away from those other businesses?
Yeah, it would have been qualified for it to be acceptable as a location. It would have been probably written into the lease that it was 4 per 1,000 minimum that are dedicated to this user, which we know is plenty sufficient for the overall user. We're trying to find the exact number for you. But I know from my role with the urban air parks, if it had less parking than that, it wouldn't have qualified as a location.
On the parking calculation that I did for the staff review on this, the count in the area south of Home Depot and north of Kohl's, so the area that they, from what I can tell, they have access to a shared parking field there. It is shared with Joann, DSW, and Bed Bath & Beyond. That the size of that field did exceed the sum of the requirement, even assuming, I had assumed 285 based on reasonable worst-case scenario of peak employment. So that's 1 for every 2 employees and 1 for every 3 patrons on the maximum projected capacity. So but that doesn't answer the exact question you were asking of how many are directly in front, but that total field exceeded the sum of the parking requirement.
Were the agreements between those businesses and the center, their leases, was there anything in the parking requirements of a facility of like this coming into play that's very different than a retail?
That may be better answered by the landlord's rep who's here.
Can you repeat that question again, please?
Basically, are Joann, DSW, and Bed Bath & Beyond okay with sharing parking with potentially 240 extra cars in front of their store?
So right now, we are working with some agreements with them,
But you don't have current agreements with them for this?
not at this time, but I don't anticipate any problems with that. Right now, their usage is very minimal.
But you don't have an agreement as of tonight?
They're in the works right now. The discussions are
Yes
taking
or no?
place.
Do you have an agreement?
Not at this time.
Okay.
And what is the nature of those agreements?
I'm sorry?
What is the nature of those possible agreements?
It's a use for this type of business in the center.
So are you, how would they have any input on that? That would be more the facility owner, would it not?
This gentleman is the facility rep. He's the rep.
Oh, so you're looking.
I'm the property
for
manager.
tenants. I'm sorry, I got mixed up, okay. And what would you be looking to do, just getting their okay for this? Because they were notified, right? So they wouldn't, they would have, if they had an objection, wouldn't they have come forward here now?
Yeah, of course, if they had concerns, and they would share those concerns with us as well. So it's more of a formality of getting the documentation for their approval for this, but I think many of them look forward to increased traffic, so.
And if it were to cause an issue, would you, as the landlord, allow certain designated spots for those smaller tenants in front of their facilities?
That's common practice if there's an issue that we could have dedicated spaces for each tenant. We obviously don't want anybody to be impacted by this use, but this is a humongous parking field, and there's, room in the back that could possibly be considered for additional parking for employees and what have you. And I presume there would be some rules that the operator would input to perhaps have their employees park further away for convenience for the collective customer base.
Just on a different, I'm sorry to
No, that's
interrupt.
exactly what I was gonna ask, if you could require employees, because there are so many. To park further away, like not within the first 15, 20 spaces or whatever.
That's best practices.
I guess the question I have is something on a different line, and that is, this section of that particular center is starting to look a little tired. So I'm just wondering if the property owner has any plans to freshen up the facade on this building.
There has been some discussions with that. Because this two spaces have been vacated for some time, we're just trying to buy a little time, but we have spent significant amount of money. There's an easement agreement with all these parcel owners that I manage. So we just spent $650,000 last year for the parking lot in front of Home Depot. We spent another about $250,000 for the drives throughout the front of the property. And, we spent additional money on painting bollards and various things around the property. So there has been a lot of money spent in the last couple of years, and it will continue to be spent to make additional improvements.
And not just on the site, on the buildings potentially?
Yeah, I mean, as we speak, we did some painting work on the property. Some of the red columns and beams have been painted recently. We're doing some work on the ceilings, some ephes work that was completed in the summer, took care of some damage that was there. So we're just implementing, phased improvement.
Okay.
And one thing to note, I noticed the site plan that is received here shows the red dotted outlet there, which is not existing, and that's not proposed at any time. So that could be considered additional parking there as well.
Anybody else? Okay, the commission, want to note that the applicant has submitted their response to section 18.3 in regards to why the special use does not inhibit further development of the facility and the other conditions under 18.3. And with that, I will open up the hearing to the public. If anyone from the public cares to comment, if they would come forward, please.
Just give me a second here. Do you mind if I just move a chair here, because I have more stuff to just put over to the side, and I don't have a table to work from. Is that okay with everybody?
You're going to be asking questions as well?
I will, yes.
Is there a microphone that
There's a handheld.
you can use, and then Mr. Sorrow can speak from the podium?
You want me to just, okay.
Sure.
Probably the petitioner group. you might want to swear in Mr. Zarro too, in case he does more than just ask questions.
Would you raise your right hand?
Yes, I will.
Do you promise the testimony you present today is the truth and free from a significant omission?
I swear to God, yes. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of procedure there? When you say significant omission, that means insignificant omissions are okay? I'm being serious.
It's whatever insignificant wouldn't matter. It wouldn't have any bearing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Lenny Asaro, spelled A-S-A-R-O. I am a partner at the law firm of Faegre, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith. It's spelled F-A-E-G-R-E, B-I-D-D-L-E, R-E-A-T-H, LLP. Our offices are located at 320 South Canal, Suite 3300, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. I appear before you today. I am one of the attorneys who represents Sky Zone. Sky Zone is located at 701 North Milwaukee. It is approximately, according to Google Earth, 1,585 feet approximately. Hopefully that's not a material omission, but it's about 0.3 miles north of the proposed premises for the urban air. On behalf of Sky Zone, I am here to oppose this particular application for a special use permit, and I have an agenda or a plan, I should say, and what I would like to do is ask some questions of the applicant. I have some documents that I would like to have admitted into the record. And then I would like to make a few points of legal arguments with respect to this particular application. So that's what my plan is, and that's how I've organized the presentation, if that is acceptable to the commission.
Could you, before you do that, however, could you describe what Sky Zone is for us so we're familiar with that?
Absolutely. Yes, Commissioner Side. Sky Zone is an attraction facility that is similar to, if not identical, to urban air. And so with that, Commissioner, what I would do is seek to introduce into the record.
Don't talk when you're away from the mic.
I understand. I would seek to admit into the record what we have marked as, I guess we'll call it Sky Zone's Exhibit Number 9, Sky Zone Exhibit Number 10, and Sky Zone Exhibit Number 11. Unfortunately, I only have 3 copies of this particular exhibit, so I'll distribute or give them to whoever you'd like. Great. So those 3 exhibits, I believe the first one that I mentioned was Exhibit 9. Is that right, Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 9 is a printout from the website for Sky Zone. And it's the Sky Zone at this particular location. And in particular, it's a printout of the page that describes and lists the attractions that are available at the Sky Zone. The next exhibit, number 10, is a printout from the webpage of Urban Air, specifically the Urban Air that's located in Mokina, Illinois. And specifically there is several pages that describe the attractions that are offered at the Mokina location. And then the exhibit number 11, so 9, 10, 11, exhibit 11, is a printout from the Urban Air webpage with respect to the location in Bloomingdale, which I believe is the closest one to the proposed location here. And as you can see in these exhibits, when you have an opportunity to do so, you will see there is a striking similarity between the attractions between Sky Zone and Urban Air. There's dodgeball, there's trampolines, there's climbing. There's a lot of very similar attractions and activities that overlap for these two companies essentially. So I know that you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it, so I want to give you that time. But hopefully, I hope that that information, those exhibits 9, 10, and 11 that I provided Commissioner Heidner, is hopefully responsive to the question that you asked.
Does Sky Zone have copyright on all of these attractions?
I have no idea whether there's any copyright issues, Commissioner. So if I could start, I would like to ask, well, according to the application that has been submitted, this is an application for a special use, and according to the notice, it's a special use and it lists 2 special uses. I believe that the notice identifies one of the special uses as being amusement, recreation, and training for adults, as well as children's recreation and fitness facilities. The question to Urban Air is, did you submit a project narrative in support of this particular special use permit application?
Yes, I submitted a project narrative.
You'll need to speak to the mic.
My project narrative was submitted.
And within that project narrative, does the project narrative state that that the Urban Air at this proposed location would include, part of the space would include a restaurant serving food and alcohol?
It outlined the the cafe.
And that Fast Cafe is a restaurant that would be serving food and alcohol, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to direct the commissioners to section 13.3.19 of the zoning ordinance, which identifies restaurants serving alcoholic beverages as listed as a special use. What that means is that this particular application that's before you has not requested a special use for that particular use within this facility. This question is for Urban Air. Do you own and/or operate the Urban Air in Mokina?
I do not operate or own the Mokina location.
Do you own or operate any of the Urban Air locations in Illinois?
No, I do not.
What is the minimum number of required parking spaces for this particular special use?
It's 4 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet.
I would like to direct the commissioner's attention to the zoning ordinance, in particular, section 19.7, which says parking requirements for permitted and special uses. Specifically with respect to section 19.7.14, it states that, and I have to start from the beginning, no permitted or special uses shall be established or maintained unless off-street parking spaces are provided as follows. And one of the as follows is section 19.7.14. and it says all other permitted or special uses. And then it says 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area. What is the gross, this question is to Urban Air, what is the gross floor area of the proposed special use?
$66,632 gross.
And what is the basis for that square footage calculation?
That's gross square footage of the entire facility.
Is that based on a survey?
It's based on our field measurements, correct?
And so based on 200 square feet per gross floor area, what would be the parking calculation, the parking, minimum parking requirement according to the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, we obviously haven't done the math on that, but if we look at the staff report, it does summarize their analysis of the parking that's required. For the mixed uses, it says 806 are required, and 840 to 862 are being provided, indicating that our use is compliant with staff report.
And does the staff report cite to the section of the zoning ordinance that was the basis for the parking calculation?
That would be a question for staff, I would think.
Well, do you have the staff report? So you do have possession of the staff report. So does it state in the staff report the section of the zoning ordinance that was the basis for the minimum parking requirement?
No.
Mr. Zardo, you will have a chance to question staff as well, so I do think petitioner raises a good point. That's probably a better question.
Okay. And I do just want to point out to the commission that our office has had a standing, and actually we've issued a FOIA request almost on a weekly or every 2-week basis. And so while I note that the one of the representatives for the applicant has a copy of the staff report, I don't have a copy of the staff report. So I don't have the opportunity to be aware of what's in the staff report or not in the staff report. So based on that, I would request an opportunity to be able to review that staff report, just as the petitioner has, in the interest of fairness. Thank you. What is the section of the zoning code that identifies the minimum parking requirement? Is it section 19.7.14?
I haven't provided the testimony on the staff report yet. I don't know if you, procedurally, if we should limit it to the
Yeah,
questions.
Why
for
don't we
the-
stick with the petitioners?
Okay.
And then we'll move to, after Andrew makes his presentation, move to Andrew?
That's fine. I just figured since we were on the same topic, if you wanted to, okay, no problem.
So it's not piecemeal.
Yep. To Urban Air, you mentioned in your presentation to the commission your competition. Do you recall that?
I may have mentioned that.
Is the Sky Zone at 701 North Milwaukee Avenue in Vernon Hills your competition?
It was viewed as competition, but not a direct overlap in the same attractions that we have to offer.
Why did you decide to locate the Urban Air approximately 1,600 feet from the Sky Zone?
Because of the building that was available. and heights and demographics and availability in the market.
Did you search for any other locations in the area of this particular location that you were proposing?
There is one other building that was available, but later on, the landlord did not offer it up.
Do you own and operate any other urban airs?
No, I do not.
Does Urban Air did Urban Air provide you with any franchise information with respect to the recommended minimum distance from a competing use like Urban Air?
No.
Do you know what attractions that Urban Air will have that are the same or similar to the attractions that Sky Zone has at 701 North Milwaukee?
Not the entire list. Oh,
To expand on that one, though, I think it's probably important to discuss right now that, you're making the comparisons overall of the comparable attractions that are within the facility. There are obviously slight variations to those in Urban Air, but Urban Air also provides go-karts. Does Sky Zone have go-karts?
I'm not testifying other than stating what facts are. So I'm not the actual Sky Zone owner. So you can ask whatever questions you want to ask. If it deals with the law and if it deals with information that I have available here, then I can answer that. So.
Okay, that seems like an interesting approach. Go-karts, we have, to my best recollection, I do not believe that Sky Zone does. Virtual reality, laser tag, ropes course, their patented Skyrider, which is a zip line along the ceiling, Leap of Faith, as well as Stairway to Heaven. And spin flip carts as well, which are, to the best of my knowledge, majority of those attractions are Urban Air specific. So it is the baseline of what Urban Air does, is the standard trampolines, is what's being spoken to as an overlap. So as I stated before, I probably have 50 to 60 Urban Airs in different levels of either open, under construction, or in design. There, to be blunt, is no real concern about where it's located relative to a Sky Zone. That's why Neil responded to the competition question like he did. I have facilities where we have put an Urban Air in, and there is a Sky Zone or other competitor directly across the street, and it's of no concern for the most part because the attraction mix is so different, right? So I'm honestly kind of surprised by this. It kind of feels like like a McDonald's yelling because there's a Red Robin going in across the street.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, Mr. Sorrow, I just want to make a point here that this is a hearing related to granting or recommending a special use be granted. Prohibiting or limiting competition is not a factor in a zoning decision. So, Mr. Asaro, we've let this go on, and we'll let additional questions go, but competition, this is about whether or not the standards for special use have been met. Limiting competition is not something this board should really consider as they move forward. It's whether or not the standards have been met. And we'll let continued questions go, but I would ask you to really kind of get to the heart of the zoning matter. It seems like you're spending a lot of time on competition. But again, we're not telling you to not ask further questions. We just want you to maybe kind of rein it in a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Frollo.
Sure.
The zoning ordinance specifically at section 18.1 states, purpose, The principal objective of this ordinance is to provide for an orderly arrangement of compatible building and land uses and for the proper location of all types of uses required for the social and economic welfare of the village. To accomplish this objective, each type and kind of use is classified as permitted in one or more of the various districts established by this ordinance. However, in addition to those uses specifically classified and permitted in each district, there are certain additional uses which it may be necessary to allow because of the service they provide the public. However, because of their unusual characteristics, such uses require particular consideration as to their proper location in relation to the adjacent, established, or intended uses, or to the planned development of the community. And then it goes on to talk about special uses.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
I'm
Right.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr.
You
Frollo.
don't- you know, we're familiar with the zoning ordinance, and I'm gonna tell you, you know as well as I do, that the market will dictate who survives and who doesn't. Whether or not a special use gets granted by the village board ultimately and recommended by this body really has nothing to do with protecting other businesses, as well as, I mean, that's just simply not a factor. You've read a lot of general language from the zoning code there. Really, limiting competition is not a zoning consideration. So that's my opinion to this board. I mean, you can continue with your presentation, but that's really not something that's really considered in any of the standards for the special use that we go through and have to make findings on. 18.31, 18.32, all the way through 18.3.6. So, I mean, again, continue on, but I'd ask you to probably focus on some of your the more zoning-related issues.
Okay. All I'm making an effort to do here, and I understand what you have to do, I've actually served on a plan commission, so I've done this before many times. All I'm trying to do is actually just establish a record.
Understood.
And we can go from there, and that's the reason why I cited to that particular section in the zoning ordinance, because I want to make it clear to all of you, I'm not here to waste your time, and this is not a personal issue with urban air. I'm just doing my job, and I'm trying to follow the law, and I'm trying to cite the law in order to basically make what I believe as a lawyer, cogent arguments to establish a record. And that's all that I'm requesting to be able to do.
Continue on.
Is that fair enough?
We're not telling you not to do that. Continue
Okay.
on.
Thank you very much. Section 18.3.2 is one of the standards for a special use, and it states, "The special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood." Before I go on and actually ask a question on this point, I want to make it clear to the commission, our position has absolutely nothing to do with competition. That is not why I'm standing before you today and advocating for my client. One may want to construe it that way, but a zoning ordinance is about land uses, and it's about the management of land uses and how they relate to one another. That is the reason why I'm actually here before you today. And an analogy of a Burger King and a McDonald's is certainly an interesting one to make, but the amount of investment that has gone into Sky Zone, essentially, I mean, it just kind of sends the message that, you know, special uses, which have a special category, they're not like permitted uses, okay? McDonald's and Burger Kings typically are not, the only special use that's required for a McDonald's or Burger King is the drive-through. Those are typically located in zoning districts that are permitted as of right. So you're absolutely right. That's where competition comes in. These are special uses. And the reason why they're special uses is because municipalities And zoning and economic development departments have a duty to manage how those uses work with each other. You don't want to cannibalize somebody who comes in and spends money on a special use like this. Because what may happen is you get an urban air, you lose a sky zone. I don't know if that's particularly productive with respect to the overlay district, which clearly states that it wants to maintain as many businesses as possible because the crux of the overlay district is to generate what? Sales tax revenue. So, 1 minus 1 equals 0. So I want to make it clear, this is not about competition. This is not personal to urban air. So with respect to the standard, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood. Did Urban Air consult with any individual who has any expertise in evaluating valuation impact?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to say.
Okay, so the standard states, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood. And so my focus is on that part of the standard, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood. Did Urban Air consult with a real estate broker as to whether or not the proposed special use would have any impact on property values within the adjacent neighborhood?
No.
Did Urban Air consult with a real estate broker to seek an opinion or an evaluation as to whether or not the proposed special use would impair or impact property values within the adjacent neighborhood?
No.
Does Urban Air's response to this particular standard address whether or not the proposed special use will impair or in any way impact property values within the adjacent neighborhood? And if you could look at your written response, that's my question. You submitted an application, and in that application, one of the boxes is required that there be written responses to the standards that Mr. Ferrolo identified earlier. I have an extra copy if you'd like to take a look.
Are you referring to section 18.3?
Correct.
Which they have responded to.
Right.
I'd like to
And
make a
Commissioner,
quick-
my question was, in that written response, do they say anything about impairment of property values? That was my question. So if it's okay with the commission, I'm just going to show a copy.
I'd like to make a quick comment on that. I'm actually a licensed real estate broker. I don't practice in sales, but I'm a property manager, and I do have understanding on valuation of commercial properties, which ultimately is derived on the revenues of the businesses that are in each property, often is the case. And I've gotten feedback from one of the tenants, or I should say one of the parcel owners, that is required to sign a waiver on this, and their exact response was, more people, more business, better for me. So if we're going to evaluate an evaluation on property values, if the perceived understanding of local businesses is that this is going to bring in more people, which gives an opportunity to generate more sales by the traffic, then this would be an improvement to the evaluation of the local properties there.
Ms. Farrell, should I wait for an answer from Mr. Hoffner?
I think the question was more straightforward than that. You can repeat it, but Lenny, if you want.
We're referring to my response in 18.3.2 about the special use with the adjacent neighborhood. My response was that the list contains a list of prohibited uses and restrictions for the protection of each tenant in the immediate vicinity. This is Joanne, REA, DSW, and Bed Bath & Beyond. And we require approval from each tenant for this lease to be executed. So this agreement allows the sale of similar items while protecting each business with the specified permitted uses. That was my response.
Okay. So your response does not speak to the specific issue as to whether or not, or it doesn't speak to the specific topic in the standard having to do with impairment of property values, or just property values at all?
It does not discuss property values.
Thank you.
To add one more comment on property values,
Sir, you will get a chance to rebut after Mr. Sorrell's done with his questions. So if we could focus on answering Mr. Sorrell's questions, and then we'll move into a rebuttal. Thank you.
And Ms. Frollo, I'm happy if the gentleman wants to answer that question. I'll pose it to him if he wants to answer that question.
Sure.
And quite frankly, he can say what he wants. I'm not going to.
Are you okay with that?
I'm
Okay.
totally.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
so I guess 2 points that was mentioned in the document is that there are waivers that are required for the use here, and those have been distributed to all the partners that we are with, all the parcel owners. And as I mentioned, one that I've already received back has been very positive. And as far as valuation goes, you know, the vacancies that we've had at this property for a number of years is a direct impact to our value on this property. So I think that's speaking directly to that question is the detriment that we face with the vacancy.
And are you a Illinois licensed real estate broker?
I am.
And for this particular application for a special use, did you analyze and develop a specific opinion as to whether or not the proposed special use would impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood? It's a specific question.
No.
Section 18.3.6 is another standard for special use, and it states that the special use shall in all other respects conform to applicable regulations of this ordinance. One of the regulations of the zoning ordinance is section 4.14. Is that correct? I'll ask the question again. One of the zoning regulations applicable to this property is under section 4.14 of the zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I don't have it.
You might want to show them the regulation. That might be fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, because this was central to it, that's why I asked it that way. I wasn't trying to be tricking. It was just, it's the overlay district, and it was one of the things that Mr. Atkinson had referenced in his emails to Mr. Hoffner, so I'm not trying to trick anyone. So why don't we take that out? I have that here. Or maybe it'd be just easier. You want to come up? I promise I won't bite. Okay. Okay. The subject property is Zone B-1, General Business District, according to your application, correct? I'll show you the application.
Okay, that seems familiar, yes.
Okay? And I'm showing you a printout of the B-1 General Business District. I mean, you can thumb through it. I'm like,
Right, but I'm not familiar with this. This is the
Okay.
first time I've seen this document.
that's fine. Under section 13.1, I'm just going to read what it says here. At such times when property zone B-1 General Business District is located within the core retail area of the village, as set forth on the zoning district map, the provisions of section 4.14 et sec shall apply as it fully set forth therein. Is that a correct statement of what I just read?
Yes, you read that correctly.
Okay. The zoning map shows that this property is actually in the overlay, the commercial overlay district. If you need me to, I have a zoning map. I don't want to waste your time in taking it out, but thank you.
Wasn't that changed? The commercial district to allow other developments to go in other than retail. Is that what he's referring to? Are you referring to retail development?
I'm referring, well, let's just take out the zoning map. I didn't make any statement about what was permitted or not permitted. I was just making a statement of that the zoning map shows that this property is in the overlay district. So that we make a clear record, I'm just going to take out the zoning map. How about that? So the zoning map, the one that's available online, shows that this property is located, well, one, it's in the B1 zoning district, but then according to the legend, based on the yellow or the diagonal lines, it's in the core retail area. That's the only point I wanted to make. And because it's in the core retail area, according to the zoning ordinance, section 13.1, the proposed special use is subject to section 4.14.
And you also, Sky Zone is in this district, is that correct?
That is correct.
Was anybody else under the impression that district had been eliminated?
It's on the current zoning map, right? I mean, that's, so it's still showing as being in existence.
Because we have many things that are not retail in this area now.
But I think the central point was that Mr. Atkinson, when he was first dealing with Mr. Sauer, referred to section 4.1 in the overlay districts. Is that what you stated?
He did. He did. He referred to it in an email with Mr. Huffner, which I'm going to also present to the commission. Sure. Yeah.
So that was as recently as a few months ago, I assume. So it's still in play.
So on that point, I'm going to introduce into the record what we're marking as Sky Zone Exhibit Number 3.
Right now, we have 9, 10, and 11.
And
We're going to go 3 on this one?
we're going 3, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's because I already marked them before I got here,
I got
so.
it. I just wanted to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, thanks.
And we could admit them at the end,
Sure.
once testimony's completed.
Did you have a number?
I
with
take,
respect
yes,
to that?
zoning map is number 1. Thank you, Commissioner Hesner. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes.
Thank you. So according to Exhibit 1, the subject property is located in the core retail area overlay district. And as I had indicated, based on what I cited to in the zoning ordinance, that means that it is subject to the regulations in Section 4.14. The exhibit that I just gave to you, Exhibit 3, I'm just going to publish from it. It's an email from Mike Atkinson dated Tuesday, March 29th, 2022 at 11:08 a.m. to Mr. Neil Hoffner. Subject matter is Ray Special Use Application. It states, Neil, this property is located within the core retail overlay district. Multi-tenant buildings within this district are required to maintain a minimum retail restaurant floor area of not less than 80% of the building. This includes all spaces from Home Depot to the vacant 19,300 square foot space. Conversely, 20% of the combined floor area can be non-retail restaurant. The total square footage of these combined spaces is 302,818. 20% of 302,818 equals 60,563. This represents the maximum allowable space for the proposed urban air. As a reminder, a special use permit is required for this use. Thank you. I direct the Commission's attention to Section 4.14.4, subsection A, which states, for all applicable properties as set forth in Section 4.14.3, the owners must maintain a minimum of 80% of building floor area per building. That's singular, not plural, per building. For RSEs, which are abbreviated in the previous section for retail sales establishment, and the remainder being for RSEs or non-RSEs. Going back to Exhibit 3, Mr. Atkinson referred to the buildings being, the building being comprised of the Home Depot to the vacant 19,300 square foot space. Exhibit number 2 is an appraisal report prepared by Newmark Knight Frank for Marketplace at Vernon Hills, address 413 Milwaukee Avenue. It was an appraisal report prepared for Dean Ciampos, Mid-America Asset Management, Inc. And the transmittal letter on the appraisal is February 12th of 2021. I can testify under oath I obtained a copy of this appraisal report by going to the assessor's office records and then clicking on prior appeals, and there is a link to this particular document. So that's where I got it from. Okay. The application that's before you is for the building at 413 Milwaukee Avenue. This appraisal report is for 413 Milwaukee Avenue. It states in here on the transmittal letter, that the property has a gross building area of 191,418 square feet. Mr. Atkinson, in his email, stated that the building area, which includes the Home Depot, is 302,818 square feet. Going back to the appraisal report, it states that on the transmittal letter, and I highlighted this for ease of use, it states that the current configuration consists of 5 units ranging from 19,360 square feet to 61,612 square feet. The executive summary of the appraisal report, again, refers to net rentable area of 191,418 square feet, and it refers to the address of 413 Milwaukee Avenue. The introduction under ownership says that the current owner is Marketplace at Vernon Hills, LLC. Page 42 of the appraisal report is a land and site analysis. It highlights the area of the 413 North Milwaukee Avenue property. As you can see there, it does not include the Home Depot. On the following, or on page 44, it lists the land parcels, the property index numbers. Most importantly, on page 49, it shows improvement analysis. And according to that improvement analysis, it shows that the building, 413 Milwaukee Avenue, is comprised of 5 units. The Joann Fabrics, according to this appraisal report. DSW, Bed Bath & Beyond, the available space where Urban Air proposed to be located, and then an adjacent available space next to that. What you were presented by Urban Air shows or at least suggests that the Home Depot is part of the building. It's not part of 413 Milwaukee Avenue. And this particular appraisal report corroborates that. On page 50, at the top, it states, again, the address, and it says that the property was originally constructed as a mega warehouse, discount and grocery store that was built for occupancy by Super Kmart. In 2004, the property was converted for multi-tenant occupancy. And then in the chart below, it says number of buildings, 1. The reason why that's important is because when I cited to you the section in the overlay district, it refers to building, singular, not plural. Showing you Sky Zone Exhibit number 4. Sky Zone Exhibit number 4 is a printout from the assessor's website for the property at 413 North Milwaukee Avenue. It identifies the owner as Marketplace at Vernon Hills, LLC. Exhibit number 7 is a printout from the Illinois Secretary of State's office for Marketplace at Vernon Hills, LLC. It identifies the principal office. It identifies the managers. Sky Zone Exhibit number 5 is a printout from the assessor's website and for the property at 493 Milwaukee Avenue. It shows the owner as 493 North Milwaukee Avenue LLC. That particular property, 493 North Milwaukee Avenue, is the building where the Home Depot is located. Sky Zone Exhibit number 8. Is a printout from the Illinois Secretary of State's office with respect to the entity 493 North Milwaukee Avenue LLC. It identifies the managers. To the best of my knowledge and belief, based on the documents that I have reviewed and provided to you, the owner of the Home Depot building, 493 North Milwaukee, is different, separate, and not a part over related to the ownership of the 413 Milwaukee Avenue building. My question is, does the owner of the 413 Milwaukee building also own 493 Milwaukee? Does the owner of 413 North Milwaukee, own the building at 493 Milwaukee Avenue? No. Going back to Exhibit 3, which is the excerpt from the email from Mr. Atkinson, he based the calculation of the total floor area on 413 Milwaukee Avenue and 493 Milwaukee Avenue. The ordinance that I cited to you in the overlay district states that in section 4.14.4, for all applicable properties as set forth in section 4.14.3, the owners must maintain a minimum of 80% of building floor area per building for RSEs, and the remainder being for RSEs or non-RSEs. What that means, based on the evidence that I've shown you, is that a minimum, the 20% calculation needs to be based on the building area of the building in this case, which is 413 Milwaukee Avenue. It cannot include the Home Depot building, which is a completely separate building. According to the appraisal report that I tendered to you, the total square footage of the 413 Milwaukee Avenue property is 191,418 square feet. That appraisal report identifies the square footage of each of the spaces, the Joann Fabrics, the DSW, the Bed Bath & Beyond, and then the proposed space for this special use is 61,612, and then the available space at 19,360. Multiplying 20% times the actual building square footage of 191,418 equals 38,283.6. Based on that calculation, it appears that the proposed urban area may not exceed 38,283.6 square feet of building floor area. Urban Air is proposing a space of, I believe, 61,000 plus, so I'll actually get that correct. How much space is Urban Air proposing to develop within, according to its application and plans?
That's a question, right? You're
Yeah,
waiting
it
for an
is,
answer?
yeah.
Somebody,
I think you discussed the answer before, but based on the emails that I had with Mike Atkinson, it was 60,563.
Okay. According to the email, well, it's a different question. I'll re-ask it again. What is Urban Air, how much space is Urban Air proposing to develop and use with respect to this special use?
I already answered it.
Okay. And is it that 60,563 number?
Right.
Okay.
Reference before earlier too.
Okay. And so I would submit to the commission, Mr. Atkinson, he calculated the maximum at 60,563 square feet of floor area because he included the additional building located at 493 North Milwaukee, which is a different property index number, which is the home of the Home Depot. That particular building, the Home Depot, contains 113,625 square feet of floor area per the assessor's website, which is one of the exhibits that I just provided to you. To the extent that section 4.14.3 requires the calculation to be based on the total square footage of only the 413 North Milwaukee Avenue building, singular, not plural, then the maximum non-retail, also known as non-RSEs for that building, appears to be 38,283.6 square feet of floor area. This particular special use application proposes 60,563. The point is that according to the section in the zoning ordinance specifically regarding the special use permit, specifically section 18.36, which is one of the standards, the standard says the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the ordinance. This particular special use at 60,000 plus square feet does not conform with the ordinance, specifically the section in the overlay district that I just cited to you. So on its face, it does not satisfy that particular standard, which is required. I note to the commission that section 4.14.4, subsection C of the ordinance does not appear to be applicable because the multiple buildings per Mr. Atkinson's email, where I quote, he states all spaces from Home Depot to the vacant 19,360 space, those are not under single ownership. So that's the reason why that particular subsection does not apply, and that's the reason why I provided you with the evidence showing that the ownership is not the same between those two properties, and why the gentleman can also confirm that fact that they are not owned by the same owner. So that section would not apply. Just give me 1 second, Mr. Frollo. They're in the commission. On behalf of Sky Zone, we submitted FOIA requests, multiple FOIA requests to the village with respect to this application for special use. One of the responses that we received a copy of the special use permit application signed by, I'm assuming it's got a signature on there by the applicant. I'm assuming it's Mr. Hoffner. And the date that shows up as September 25th, 2022. And then there's a stamp on that document that says received, Village of Vernon Hills, October 7th, 2022. Just above that signature line, there's a heading that says required documentation. And there are 9 boxes. None of them were checked off. However, what we were also provided, in addition to that one-page form application completed and signed, was the 2-page written response that the applicant submitted with respect to the standards 18.3. We received that. We also received Exhibit A, which is labeled as a legal description of the shopping center. I didn't go through and read this line by line. I do for a living. I didn't want to do it here. I'm assuming this is the correct legal description. It's really not an issue here. We received a copy of the check. We also received a copy of the fees collected. The only anything close to what might resemble a site plan is what you see on the screen there. That's the only some semblance of a site plan. As you can see in there, it doesn't identify the number of parking spaces, so I don't know how many total parking spaces are in that field. And there's been no evidence that's been presented to you by the petitioner, and there were questions that were asked about the parking that are actually salient and very relevant for this particular application. But there's been no evidence entered into this record as to the actual number of parking spaces that are in that parking field. Next, there has been no evidence presented to this commission as to the minimum number of required parking spaces for each one of those uses to make a determination as to whether or not there is the minimum number of parking spaces that are required on site. We have not, the only document that we've been provided in response to our FOIA request to find it, that might resemble a floor plan is it's an architectural plan. It's called attraction plan. It identifies the attractions that are located there. Perhaps as a reciprocal courtesy, the petitioner wouldn't mind sharing with me what that document is, because I thought I added it here to save us time as I've provided people. Thank you, Mr. Jennings. This is the document that we were provided in response to the FOIA request. This particular attraction plan it's not dimensioned. It doesn't contain the dimensions of the space. It doesn't contain the dimensions of the attractions. It doesn't contain the square footage of the space being depicted here. It doesn't contain, from my recollection, I just want to double check, it doesn't contain a legend with a measurement. I would ask the urban air, you're the gentleman from DA? Is that correct? And I apologize, I don't mean to be offensive, but I didn't get all the names when they were mentioned, so I would address you by your last name.
I'm the architect. My name's Adam.
Okay.
I'm also one of the owners of Logic Design and Architecture.
Okay,
I produced that plan.
okay. Okay, thanks. And have you provided any dimensioned floor plans to the village?
I would assume at some point that we have, if those questions would come up.
Did you provide a dimensioned floor plan to the village in support of this special use permit application?
My assumption would be that we did, to demonstrate that we're satisfying certain requirements of it.
You say you assume that you did. So
Correct.
I'm just trying to, did you actually submit a dimensioned floor plan to the village in connection with this special use permit application?
I don't recall. That's why I say I assume. Do you know if we did?
I don't know if you did or not.
Okay.
I just submitted FOIA requests, and I just actually told you what I received in response to our FOIA request, and this is the only document that I received. So who at DA would have knowledge as to whether or not DA prepared dimensioned floor plans?
I would.
Okay? And so do you know whether or not you or anyone in your office prepared dimensioned floor plans for this space?
At this moment in time, no, it's kind of a ridiculous question, right? If I were to be sitting in front of my computer and I could look at that for you, sure. But I'm curious as to what your point is.
Thank you. This is a question to Urban Air. Are you aware whether or not, for this proposed special use, you need to obtain a variation or a variance? Under the zoning ordinance, I believe it's referred to as variation. What variation are you required to obtain for this special use?
370 foot.
But what do you need to obtain a variation from? What particular standard does this proposed special use does not meet that you need to obtain a variation?
I'm not sure exactly what you're saying.
Okay, is there something about this proposed special use that does not conform to the zoning ordinance, which is the reason why you have to obtain a variation?
I provided a variation because that's what Lisa requested that I provide.
If I could on that point, I know you're not directly questioning me. He doesn't know the terminology that's being used, the terminology that the assessor's office uses when somebody requests a public hearing notice radius list is that 370-foot variance list. So we direct people to go to the assessor's office with that request. That's just their terminology. That's how you get to the point with them of providing the
List.
the list. It's not, it's the 250-foot rule plus we pad on for large right-of-way. So that's the 370-foot variance list. That he doesn't know the backstory of what that terminology comes from.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, Mr. Jennings. And again, I didn't want to waste anybody's time. As a zoning attorney, when you see a variance, you think that somebody's asking for a variance. You guys call it variation, some other districts. So when I saw that in the response, that's the reason why I was asking, is there some other relief that's being requested? Because as we all know, for variation, you've also got to get approvals for that. So that's why I asked. So thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that. I would also like to introduce into the record Sky Zone Exhibit Number 6. Sky Zone Exhibit Number 6 is an article from the Lake County Gazette from August 18, 2022. And I'm going to give my copy here too to the petitioner so that they have it. The headline of the article, or the lead, is Urban Air General Manager. My biggest complaint is all of the destructive teenagers being dropped off, fighting and breaking things. Again, it's just an article in a newspaper or Lake County Gazette. I'm not testifying to the truth or veracity of it. I just want to make that clear, lest anybody think I am. I'm just sharing information with you. You can do with it as you please. I just want to give a copy.
Well, then does that allow me to present evidence about Sky Zone having similar issues as well?
You'll get a chance to rebut after this question, as the question is completed. Mr. Zara, how much more time do you think you have?
Well, I think I was like wrapping up. That's why I was just
Okay, all right.
double checking my notes. I don't have anything else, but I do have some, I don't know when you want me to ask, any questions of the village, so to speak. I only just have a few, so I don't know whenever you
Yeah,
want.
I think the next section after rebuttal will be village staff presentation. That would probably be the time to ask questions of the village
Okay,
staff.
that's fine, yeah. So I think with that, I don't have any other evidence that I want to introduce into the record. Again, subject to the questions, because, well, I'll just say this, Mr. Frollo. The concern that I have is that I have the opportunity to obviously ask questions like I have done and present evidence. I don't know if I've been provided with everything that has been provided to the commission to consider to make a recommendation here today. And so if there has been something that has been submitted that they have that I don't have, I would just like the opportunity to be able to review it and possibly ask questions about it. But I don't know what I don't have.
Yeah, and I don't either at this point, so it's hard. I don't know if you're asking for continuance of this, or I'm not sure what that is.
Well, no, so actually, so I'll ask you, not the commission, one of the questions I was gonna ask is, so as you know, there's a record and of the testimony, but there's also a record as to all the documents that have been introduced.
Right.
I would ask that all of our exhibits be introduced. I just want to know all the documents that are being introduced into the record that I haven't introduced, that the commission is considering in making a recommendation here today. Because that's all I really care about.
Sure. I think you'll hear when staff makes, Andrew makes his presentation, if there's any additional documents, we'll find out.
Okay.
They'll be admitted then.
That's fine.
Beyond that, there won't be any more unless
That's fine.
petitioner has more to introduce, which I doubt.
So as long as, if there is a document that is not been entered into the record that I haven't seen yet or have seen for the first time, I would just respectfully request an opportunity to review it and potentially ask questions.
Understood.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd recommend that you consider admitting into evidence Sky Zone Exhibits 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, so recommended.
Do you accept them into the record? You want to make a motion? Maybe we'll do it that way. Motion to accept those stated exhibits into evidence?
If that is the motion, or can I make that motion?
Please make a motion, Mr.
Can,
President.
just before you ask that, can, Lake County Gazette, where is that circulated and who publishes that?
I just did a Google search. That's all I did.
Does anybody know what that is?
I've never heard of it.
You can consider it for what it's
Yeah.
worth. It's
Yeah.
hearsay, it's a newspaper article, really doesn't have a,
Well, I'm not even sure it's a newspaper.
Oh,
That's the question.
well,
It's fine, it's an exhibit. It's one of the exhibits. So I make a motion to include exhibits 1 through 13.
actually, let me say them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. They came in different
11.
order. That's,
Okay, 1 through 11 into the record. May I have a second for that?
Second.
We do a voice vote on that.
voice vote's fine. All
All
in
in
favor?
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Now, Mr. Chairman, at this time, the petitioner has a chance to rebut any of the evidence that was presented, if they choose to do so. So would you like an opportunity?
Before we go
Yeah.
there, we've
Yes.
asked to take a 5-minute
Oh,
personal
that
break.
makes sense. We've been here a long time, for sure. Motion to recess for 5 minutes?
We'll recess for 5 minutes.
Second?
Voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We'll be back at 9:30. Staff and their report.
Well, rebuttal, are there any rebuttal
Oh.
from the petitioner that you guys like to present?
Sorry.
I didn't bring any evidence, but I just wanted to keep this conversation flowing in the context that we're here for a special use permit. And a lot of the flavor of these arguments and evidence has been more in view of competition. So that's just something I want to keep the focus on while we're here today.
Okay. Staff.
I will be brief. Andrew Jennings, Community Development Director for the Village of Vernon Hills. I have not been sworn in, and I probably should be if I'm going to provide testimony.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and swear Mr. Jennings in, please?
Raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you present tonight will be the truth and free from omission?
I do. The commissioners received in advance of this hearing a staff report. I'm not going to read the entire report. It is a part of this record. It has the attachments listed as the staff exhibit, which are existing conditions photos. There's an aerial photo that you saw at the beginning of the slideshow this evening. There is a existing condition photo of the front of the subject building. We included a copy of the special use standards. There is a project narrative, which I will talk about in 1 second, and the floor plan that was previously discussed under the questions by Mr. Astaro. The staff report, just some of the important notes from this. I paraphrased the project narrative in the description of the proposal, covering items like the typical hours, the peak hours, their ticket options, the offering of food service, the employee count, and the capacity. In my discussion of the parking requirement, I had noted that the parking requirement, in my review of the relevant documents, comes from the regional PUD, the Marketplace River Tree Regional PUD, which uses a ratio of 1 per 3 patrons and 1 per 2 employees. Based on the application that was submitted, I calculated that out to be 285 stalls. So that's the number that I used in my analysis for this. The parking, if you apply the standard retail ratio from the PUD, this would be an increase of 40 stalls required above the standard retail ratio. But I did note that the total parking count still exceeds the sum of the required parking for the mix of uses, which I calculated out to be 806 required. The provided parking was a little bit difficult. I was using an aerial photo and counting them off of that. Some of those stalls look like maybe they had been snow removal, so I wasn't sure if they were striped out or not. So that's why there's a range listed there of somewhere between 840 and 862. As noted in the earlier testimony, that figure includes a parking area south of Home Depot and north of Kohl's. The other points from the staff review and recommendation section, I had noted that the square footage of the proposed unit is not clear. The floor plan that you have is scaled, but based on the scale that was provided, I wasn't able to dimension it. We do have other documentation that was unrelated to the special use application. There's a floor plan included in a building permit submittal where we have some idea of the space. The reason that is relevant is the calculation needs to be finalized in order to determine if that building, the building conversion certificate is needed. Based on the calculation of the square footage, it does appear that is going to be needed. That is not something that the Planning and Zoning Commission provides. That is a certificate that comes from the village board. So my recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission would be to make sure that there's a reference to the need for the building conversion certificate in any motion that's made. We would then include that calculation with the committee of the whole report. The other notes from the staff review, I did note that the cafe plan does include alcohol service. Point 3, that's just as a reminder that the board, the Liquor Control Commission, would need to issue a liquor license for that. There was no analysis related to whether or not that triggered an additional special use requirement. I noted a requirement for review and approval by Lake County Public Works related to potential increase in the water service size, sanitary sewer system design, whether or not a grease trap is required for this. I would assume until they tell you that it isn't required that is going to be a requirement. And the standard health permit from the county. Beyond that, I think I covered everything. Sort of a relatively short staff report, so happy to answer questions on it.
Did you state that they already submitted for building permit?
We got a large submittal. It may have been the tail end of the technical review. I'm not totally sure. This kind of overlapped between Mr. Atkinson and myself, so I set that aside. It's hundreds of pages rolled up, so it's a building permit set, and I had informed them that we wouldn't proceed with the building permit set until further along in zoning entitlement.
Even if it isn't a building permit set, a technical review set is very detailed and required. So most of the elements that are reviewed during a building permit are in the technical review segment of this review. So if just a basis, a technical review set was submitted, I'm sure that's adequate for our purposes and for the staff's purposes at this time.
Yeah, so what I had done was I had asked them with the floor plan just to make sure that I had a small enough version that I could forward on, and that's what you have in your packet. There were 2 project narratives submitted. The original project narrative that I referenced in the staff report was a longer, roughly 25-page version, and I had requested, given the nature of the report, I had requested more of an executive summary style to sort of boil down to it. And the staff report notes that the longer version is available on request. Yeah, beyond that,
Were you
like I said,
adding some conditions then?
the one that I had just referenced was just a recommendation that up in the staff review and recommendation section, there's a reference to square footage of the proposed unit, and that a use conversion certificate may still be required if the square footage of the unit exceeds 20% of the shopping center square footage. I would recommend that, should the plan commission wish to make a motion, that a reference to the building conversion certificate be part of that motion.
And based upon testimony that we've heard tonight, are you under any different impression than what was written by Mike Atkinson in his letter?
I'm not sure what all Mike reviewed when he did it. I did not come to the same conclusion that Mike came to. I don't have any reason to believe that Home Depot is under common ownership. The PUD, I didn't find anything in the regional PUD that would conflict with that, because the PUD predates the building use conversion section of the zoning code. So I found nothing that would suggest that Home Depot should be included, and therefore I would say that the building use conversion certificate would be a requirement as part of what the board reviews.
Are you saying then that the Home Depot is a separate building then in the village's eyes than this proposed, and not part of these calculations?
Under that section, what I think the intent of that section is, the entities don't overlap. It's not two LLCs owned by the same company. That there's no land use lease control that's held in common. If that were the case, if there was some documentation presented to show that that's the case, we would reconsider. But I have not found anything that would suggest that the land use, the lease decision on what tenants can go in those two spaces overlaps.
So what is a use conversion certificate? Explain that to me.
So in the village code, inside the core retail district, the intent of that district was to protect the retail nature of basically the Milwaukee and Town Line corridors, closest to that intersection mostly, as you saw on the zoning map. So when a building or a multi-tenant building converts from a retail/restaurant use, you can, as an owner, you can lease to non-retail entities up to 20% of the total leasable square footage. Once you exceed that point, there's a procedure for requesting a use conversion certificate, which is a decision made by the village board. And I have not gone through that personally here yet, so I don't have direct testimony to add to exactly how it works. But on reading the code, I do believe it's required.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Any questions on from the public regarding this?
Petitioner, any questions of staff based on what Mr. Jennings just presented? No. Okay. Mr. Asaro, questions?
Yes. Do I have an opportunity to review that staff report that the petitioner also reviewed?
You know, honestly, I thought we had given it to you among the various FOIA responses.
Yeah.
I'm happy to send it your way, but I thought that was something that we had sent to you guys. But
Yeah.
we can get you a copy of it.
Okay. Is there an
I got a
extra?
copy here. If you
Do you?
want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want
Yeah,
to.
it's fine. It was attached to the agenda, I see, that was published as well.
Oh,
Yeah, it was part of, yeah.
all right, I'll look for the agenda. All right, and I just saw the agenda itself. What is the basis for calculating the parking requirement? We'll strike that. Is there anything in the zoning ordinance, in particular, the section regarding parking and parking requirements, that allows for the reliance on the regional PUD to calculate parking?
So the regional PUD, there is a reference to regional PUDs in the code. I could not cite the section for you. The regional PUD refers back to the zoning code, and by paraphrasing, it basically says that the following are the parking regulations specific to this regional PUD.
So is the parking requirement that's applicable for this property the requirement as stated in the zoning ordinance?
No, I believe it is the one from the regional PUD.
And what is the basis for that? Like, where could I read that in the zoning ordinance that says that the parking shall be calculated based on the regional PUD?
I don't think you would find a specific reference that would say that.
Okay.
It's an ordinance that was adopted by the village after the original adoption of the zoning code.
Okay. And then, did I hear that the attraction plan is scaled?
There is a scale noted on it. It is not to that scale. There's a scale. It's reduced down from probably a 24 by 36 if I had to guess. But there's a non-graphic scale on it.
It was that in that document that you gave to me?
Yes.
Can I just see that again?
It's listed as 1/16 equals 1 foot 0 inches. Lower right-hand corner.
Oh,
Under attraction plan.
very small.
Right there. Oh, okay, I was looking at that one. Oh. Okay. Thank you. So with respect to the zoning or with the conversion certificate, will that conversion, or strike that? The maximum non-retail for this building is 20% of the total floor area, correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. That's what it says in the ordinance, zoning ordinance, correct?
Mhm.
And would it be also fair to say that the square footage of the building that's going to be used to make that calculation is the square footage that's either in, according to the assessor's records or the appraisal report, both of which are consistent, showing 191,418 square feet?
I would use that, yes, I would use that number.
Okay. The floor area reference in the email from Mr. Atkinson, that's not the number that would be used, correct?
I would not come to that conclusion based on what I've seen.
Okay. And so 20% of 191,418 square feet is 38,283.6. Is that a correct calculation?
I had done it just on the percentage, so I came up with roughly 32%. This unit would represent about 32% of the square footage.
Well, The total square footage of the building is 191,000 square feet. 191,418. And the Joann, the DSW, and the Bed Bath & Beyond are all retail, correct?
Correct.
So the total, the maximum allowed non-retail for the building is 38,283.6 square feet, correct?
I calculated the other direction. I calculated what percentage this would represent, this 61,000 and change would represent. I mean, I can do the math now, but what I'm saying is it exceeded 20%. It was roughly 32%.
Okay. I just want to just establish, just for the record, that 20% of the building, the maximum non-retail for this building is 20% of the floor area, correct?
Yeah, so
According to the ordinance.
right, that would be 38,283.6
Okay, that's the maximum amount of non-retail.
without requiring the conversion certificate, correct?
Right, and that's all I'm trying to just get here into the record. This proposed use is 60,563 square feet, correct?
I believe so, yes. I mean, it's represented in two different ways, but in that roughly
Right.
60,000, 61,000, yes.
Okay, so that means that this space exceeds the maximum allowed for non-retail by the difference of 60,563 minus 38,283.6, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that number is 22,279.4. And so it is because of that fact, a conversion certificate is required, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. I just want to flip through this really quickly. Why is a special use required? Because the proposed use includes the amusement, recreation, or training facility for adults?
It was required for two reasons. It was both the training facility for adults, I think is the definition that the zoning code uses, and then the recreation facility for children.
Okay. Because this particular use has multiple uses, correct?
This
It
particular
certainly has
use on the
has more than
application.
one.
I'm sorry?
This proposed development has more than one special use. And all I'm doing is just repeating what's in the application.
Yeah, so
right?
based on their application, we published it on both because they had proposed a age group that spanned, it seemed to go beyond children, so.
Right. But this proposed development has multiple, meaning more than one special use.
It does.
And it also has an additional proposed special use, which is restaurant with alcoholic beverage, correct?
That I would not necessarily agree to. I would have to double check. I do not know if that requires its own specific special use between the regional PUD, any specific PUD to the site. I would have to double check that. I know that there are places in town that have pre-approval for alcohol service, subject to liquor licensing. I would not be able to speak to whether or not this is one of those locations.
Okay. Does the zoning ordinance define restaurant?
Yeah, I would believe so. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, I looked, I didn't see a definition for restaurant. So it's your opinion that even though this proposed use has multiple uses, one of which includes a cafe that serves food and alcohol and other beverages, that a special use permit is not required for restaurant alcoholic beverage?
That is not what I said. I said I am not confident that that it is required to be a special use, a separate special use.
It could have been included in this particular application, along with these other two special uses, correct?
It could have, if it was required. What I'm saying is, I do not know, sitting here right now, that it is a location that would require a specific special use separate and apart from these.
Okay. Well, section 13.3 of the zoning ordinance, special uses in this particular B-1 district. And it states, upon recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission after public hearing on a petition in accordance with the requirements set forth in section 21.6, corporate authorities of the village may, by special use permit, allow the following uses in the B1 general business district, subject to the regulations contained in section 4.14. One of those special uses is in section 13.3.0, which is amusement, recreation, and training for adults, correct?
That's correct.
And that's one of the special uses that the urban area is applying for, correct?
Correct.
And that's stated in the application.
Yes.
Another special use that's listed is in 13.3.25, and that is children's recreation and fitness facilities, correct?
I trust you. I believe you're reading it accurately.
And that is also one of the special uses that is stated in the application, correct?
Yes, it is referenced in their application materials.
Okay. And then section 13.3.19 lists restaurants serving alcoholic beverages. So that actually is a listed specific use in that section, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this particular proposed development includes a cafe that serves food, beverage, and alcohol, based on the presentation that was made.
That is correct.
However, the special use permit application does not state that the applicant is requesting a special use for that additional use, correct?
That's correct.
And the notice of this public hearing does not reference the particular special use of restaurant serving alcoholic beverages, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And because I just got it here, does the staff report make any reference to the presentation or the proposal, albeit not in the application? Does the staff report refer to the restaurant or cafe with food and beverage and alcohol?
It does.
Okay. You said does not?
It does.
It does?
It does.
Okay. Since I just got it, can you just point to me where it is?
It's in there twice. Description of proposal, the listing of
page?
food service, page 1 of the staff report.
Page 1, okay,
Description of proposal section,
yeah,
food service, notes, pizza, fries, chicken tenders, fountain drinks, bottled beer and wine.
okay.
And then under staff review,
I wrote on this, I'm sorry.
That's my copy.
Sorry, man.
Oh, man. That's okay.
I'll print you a new one.
I wrote on
Okay,
it, too.
all right, thanks.
Under staff review and recommendation, I had a note for the commission, just that the cafe plans indicate alcohol will be available and that a liquor license will be required.
Okay. So is, under the staff review and recommendation, is staff recommending an approval of a special use that includes restaurant and restaurant and alcoholic liquor? I want to make sure I state this specific, I don't want to.
No, I had no representation to the commission in this report that an additional special use was required for that.
You have no representation that it's required. My question, though, is, are you recommending that the commission approve a special use that would allow for specifically the special use of restaurant serving alcoholic beverages as stated at section 13.3.19?
What I'm noting for the commission there is that this particular petition, as part of their operating description, is noting that they do intend to serve alcohol.
But they didn't apply for that particular special use.
They did not.
We've established that. So are you recommending to the commission that they approve that particular special use?
I'm making no recommendation on that. No recommendation one way or the other.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay. That'd be great. The only thing I would request is if I could just also just get the attachments. If this is all online, I can just pull it down.
I can email you a copy. You've seen all of it in some fashion.
Okay. But yeah, I don't want to waste your time. If you say it's connected to the agenda, I can just go on and just pull it myself. So if it's there.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a couple of pages of attachments. No issue getting those to you.
Okay. So that's all I have on this, Mr. Frollo. The only thing is, I just want to make sure I'm aware of a list of everything that's been introduced beyond our exhibit.
Sure.
Thanks.
Understood.
And you said I can keep this?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Just for clarification,
Yeah, you have a chance to rebut.
on the, in the staff report, I do reference a document that I did not attach. I said is available on request. Would we consider that to be part of the record? The reference to document that was not attached to the report? There were two project narratives. There's a short version, which I attached, and they had a 25-page version that I told the commission exists. Should that be
I would
considered
say
part of the
yes.
record?
I
Okay.
would say yes.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
That is one of the earlier FOIA responses.
I did see that, and I read through the long version of it. I'd be remiss, I just want to share with the commission, there's references to Lancaster, the Lancaster site. I don't think that this particular site is the Lancaster site, and when I did a Google search, there is a urban air in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I did read through that entire document. There's other things in it that I noted, so I share that with you in the event that you desire to read it, but it does refer to Lancaster, the Lancaster site.
Okay.
Mr. Jennings, do you have any rebuttal specifically to the
Just
questions you were asked?
Just a point of clarification for the commission, the note regarding alcohol service, there are locations in town that are pre-approved for alcohol service. What I'm trying to explain in response to the line of questioning is that I do not know sitting here with certainty that this location is pre-approved for alcohol service. The references in the staff report are purely just informational, noting that they will also need a liquor license if it is going to have beer and wine service. But the question as to whether or not an additional special use should have been published, I do not know the answer to that without having to look up and see if the Marketplace and River Tree have pre-approval for alcohol service.
So will you be looking into that?
I will look into that, sure.
Any final questions by the commission of the parties?
So then if it's determined it is necessary, they'll come back to the commission?
Yeah, I think, given, I mean, I'm not sure what the commission's desires are here, but given the late hour, we've been at this a long time, there's a lot to unpack here. The petitioners made their presentation, the objector has asked questions and made his presentation at the same time. What we're left with in our proceedings are final questions by the body and then closing remarks by the objectors and the petitioners. I wonder if the commission would consider a motion to continue the public hearing for closing remarks by the parties, for any additional information that staff will be presenting, which we just discussed, and deliberation. It seems to me there's a lot here that you took in tonight, and to make a up to you, to make a decision based on after almost 3 hours might be difficult.
Just to add to that, I mean, can I add a list of things that would help me render a decision?
Sure. And staff can work to get you that information.
Typical things I would like to see in the case
Staff
of
will work
this.
to get, and keep in mind, staff will get the commission the information and the parties the information so that they can ask additional questions if necessary.
Okay.
Yep.
So in something like this, a site plan, a parking study plan, maybe a traffic study, a proposed exterior elevation of the building, proposed signage graphics, documentation that the adjoining tenants in the building are agreeing to the shared parking, cleaning up all the building areas, gross areas, so all the numbers match from document to document, as well as with the village, descriptions of the actual building and not marketing materials such as on the screen, and then better clarification of satisfying the standards of Article 18.
And I would agree with all of that except for traffic study. I don't think a traffic study's needed for this parking lot. I think a parking study is needed.
Parking study.
But not a traffic study.
Andrew, did you get all that? So maybe the motion could be a motion to continue. Do you have a date to which we can continue this
That's
hearing?
the next question.
So this, that's a sticky wicket. We have a hearing, we have a meeting scheduled for December 14th. There's one item on that agenda, as I had noted at the last meeting, that is the setback variation related to the drive-through canopies for the Chick-fil-A drive-through expansion. It is possible to continue this to that night. Beyond that, we have a high likelihood of not having a quorum at the last meeting in December based on the last poll that was done. So we'd be looking at January. So if the commission is open to the combination of the CVS, the Chick-fil-A variation and the continuation of this hearing, that would be the next available meeting.
What was that date again?
That is December 14th.
So it would have to be published tomorrow then?
There would be no new publication. The only,
If we need to add the second or the third special use.
if a special use for alcohol service is a requirement separate and apart from the special use that's been published, it might require this being continued twice for that to catch up. If they do desire to have alcohol service and a separate special use is required. But the first available meeting that we've got is the December 14th.
But the petitioner could pursue that separate of this. You know, the petitioner could work its way through the entire process, gain approvals if it's felt to be approved, and then come back for that restaurant and alcohol component later, could they?
That would be their prerogative. If they view it as necessary for their operation, they might want the two to go together.
I mean, what we're talking about here is, you know, we could be talking about just a few months, and it takes a while for one of these things to get developed. So, you know, that could be something if the petitioner wanted to do that. Just to keep this thing clean and moving.
Okay, so it sounds like we're agreeable to,
Are you available December 14th?
I'm available December 14th. I just have to look at all the additional items that were requested to see if I can meet that deliverables.
So the items requested being a site plan as opposed to more this, the marketing graphic, parking study. These would be things that you could work together with the property management on. The staff research, which you will not be responsible for, and the documentation that property management is currently working on for the other tenants at the center agreeing to the use.
I think elevation was also mentioned, but
It
It
was
was
an,
just for signage.
so if you do not have proposed signage, if you have a prototype signage that you could add, I don't believe there was a discussion of additional changes to the elevation in conjunction with this, was there?
No, it was just maintenance question, and it was a separate issue.
everybody's agreeable to adding that on with Chick-fil-A?
Yes, yes.
I had given a brief description of the Chick-fil-A item, if this helps to make a decision on that, on the continuation. At the last meeting under the development overview, or whatever we call that, development review, Chick-fil-A is expanding its drive-through, so there's 2 ordering, similar to the Portillo's you just recently saw. They, in order to do that, they do require a variation. It'll be a change to their special use, modifying their drive-through, the site plan for their drive-through, and they need a setback variation because they want to put a canopy above the drive-through area. So if you believe that's something that seems like a relatively short business, then it
I
would.
thought this was too.
No, I'm only one voice, but I think the 14th could handle both of those.
Okay. You okay with? All right. So I'll move to continue the public hearing until December 14th.
I'll second that.
Can you have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Hesner,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
and Heiner.
Yes.
That's at 7:30, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Both parties.
Next thing on the agenda is the minutes of the November 16th meeting.
These would be, if there's a desire to make a motion, this would be a motion as corrected. We did receive a couple of corrections via email. There was an error in how we had represented Chairman Morris's absence in the vote tabulation for each motion that was made. We did correct that. I believe that was the primary issue. We do have some sort of procedural questions that were asked that we do need to work on for future minutes, but the main correction that was made was relative to the absence of Chairman Morris.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Go ahead. Motion to approve as corrected.
That's correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do you have any development review?
Under development review, we did have, since the last meeting, there has not been any major development. As I just mentioned, we do have the CVS every time. The Chick-fil-A drive-through setback variation scheduled for December 14th. And happy to take any questions on ongoing development if you have them.
Is CVS coming?
So there is a local example of the Chick-fil-A in Deer Park has that, if anyone wants to go see what it actually looks like.
The three-tier?
Deerfield, yeah. The double lane with a canopy.
Mental block. Any other questions on development review?
Okay. You're going to postpone the 2023 meeting schedule?
I had high hopes to have that discussion with
When's
Chair.
it scheduled to be back?
Great question. If we get to the point, which it looks like we will, where we actually have to have the schedule for the next year's meetings published, and we haven't had a chance to discuss it, I would go with what I would describe as the status quo option, where we would state the schedule as every Wednesday, and then on the back end, staff would have to go through the motions every cancellation. It wouldn't affect the commission, but it would be an extra step for us that we need to make to comply with the Open Meetings Act.
So it really isn't the intent to establish a standard meeting to be upheld each month?
So my
It's only
purpose
as
of,
needed.
the purpose of the discussion was to talk about both of those options, lacking the input from the chairman before we have to make that decision. I think the prudent thing to do would be continue operating with the
As needed.
as needed, but phrase it in a way that it still complies with the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Is Calvin be at the next meeting?
He's listed as a maybe.
He's doing a lot more travel in his job now. Okay, so with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned.
I have trouble between you for a signature on this, please.
Mr. Moultrie got a promotion.
So that's what I emailed, the
No, you get to
correction.